Regent Bartell.
Here.
Regent Bradley.
Here.
Regent Donnelly Kiesler.
Here.
Regent Crane.
Here.
Regent Danae Davis. Regent Stan Davis. Regent Drew.
Here.
Regent Evers.
Here.
Regent Salvo.
Here.
Regent Bossis.
Here.
Regent Askenar.
Here.
Regent Pruitt.
Here.
Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent Spector. Regent Vasquez.
Here.
Regent Walsh. Regent Wingate.
Here.
Regent Lomax.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. The minutes of the September 10 and 11, 2009 meetings have been distributed. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, they stand approved. The written report of the Wisconsin Technical College System Board has been provided. Are there any questions or comments? Regents on that board are Regents Evers, Smith, and Vasquez. I just wanted to, first of all, say good morning to everyone again, and welcome to the sort of second day of our meeting at UW-Eau Claire. A key focus of our conversation today will be on educational attainment and how we gain an even greater understanding into why some students succeed where others do not, and what we might do in the UW system to increase the number of college graduates. If anyone has any doubt as to the importance of this conversation, I would encourage you to heed the words of that great philosopher and social observer, Ron Artest, a professional basketball player of some renown, who, upon signing a lucrative contract with the Los Angeles Lakers in the off-season, explained, quote, "It was a no-brainer, which is good because I didn't finish college." Before we turn to this conversation, however, I just wanted to report in on a couple of things that we're going to be up to. I will be joining President Riley and Assistant Vice President Chris Andrews on a series of visits with Wisconsin's congressional delegation next week. Among the subjects we hope to discuss is the Student Aid and Fiscal Responsibility Act. As this legislation makes its way through Congress, we are encouraged about several aspects of the bill, including the promise of annual increases in the maximum Pell Grant over the next 10 years. The legislation also provides new federal funding opportunities for community colleges nationwide, and we want to ensure that 13 freshman and sophomore UW colleges are well positioned to compete for those funds. This will also be an opportunity to share information about the Research to Jobs Task Force presented to this board last month, and efforts underway to improve the process through which UW research translates into commercialized technology and new jobs. While we're in D.C., Kevin and I will also be meeting with the editorial board of Inside Higher Ed, a national online source of news and opinion in higher education. And it's my understanding that within a very short period of time, they will be publishing an opinion column by President Riley in which he lays out his 4 pillars of promise for higher education. You should be relieved to know that I have not written any opinion columns or academic articles in recent months, or in fact in recent years. But like many of you, I have been reading a lot. Most recently, this book, which we are going to hear a lot more about today, called Crossing the Finish Line, which is a really extraordinary analysis of the current state of higher education. And I just wanted to make just a couple notes about there is no issue that I think we will deal with in this board that will help determine America's leadership in the world and Wisconsin's leadership in America more than the issue of educational attainment. This has been a subject of many discussions by this board and other UW system leaders. It is an integral part of the strategy for meeting the long-term goals of the growth agenda for Wisconsin. Over the last 40 years in this country, we have seen a flattening of educational attainment. The percentage of those who have earned a bachelor's degree has changed hardly at all, while the time to degree has increased markedly. All the while, other countries have passed us by, and I think we all have seen or heard or thought about or read about many of these statistics. I think the one that has always struck me most is, according to the National Science Board in 1975, we were tied for second with Finland in the proportion of college-age populations that earned degrees in the natural science and engineering fields. We were only behind one country, Japan. Today we are 17th. In his book, Conscience of a Liberal, New York Times columnist Paul Krugman cited these figures from the National Center for Education Statistics that found that high-scoring students from low-income families are less likely to finish college than low-scoring students from high-income families. Mobility is highest, Krugman noted, in the Scandinavian countries and lower in the U.S. than it is in France or Canada, which caused Krugman to write, "It is clear that Horatio Alger has moved to Finland." These trends have, I think, attracted the long overdue attention of national policymakers. President Obama has issued a call for the United States by the year 2020 to, quote, "once again have the highest proportion of college graduates in the world." Many recognize this as a necessary step if we're going to remain competitive in a global knowledge economy. So I can't imagine a more important discussion and conversation than the one that Dr. Michael McPherson and his colleagues have begun and have certainly advanced over the last many weeks. And we'll hear today about some of those findings, and I think have the opportunity for people to ask as many questions as you have of Dr. McPherson. Gaining a deeper appreciation of these issues and putting our challenges in a national perspective, I think will serve us all well. And I express my appreciation to Dr. McPherson for joining us here today, and now turn it over to President Riley, who will provide a more formal introduction of our guest speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, President Pruitt. Good morning, everybody. And I'm sure that we were all as impressed as I was with our first day on the Eau Claire campus yesterday. Several of us had breakfast with some of the student leadership this morning, and we were saying to them how we noted how fronted students were in every session that was part of this visit yesterday, and how impressed we all were with their articulateness and commitment to UW-Eau Claire. So it's been really a good visit so far, and we look forward to the rest of it here on this campus on a non-snowy fall morning. It's our privilege today to have Dr. Michael McPherson as our guest speaker. He's the co-author of a new book with Bill Bowen, former president of Princeton and former president of the Mellon Foundation, Crossing the Finish Line, which I know many of us, I can say, Mike, are reading and haven't gotten all the way through. The subtitle is Completing College at America's Public Universities. In the New York Times article that Dr. McPherson was interviewed for, he addressed the question of how much a college education, the actual teaching and learning that goes on a campus, really matters. And as he put it, quote, "College can't guarantee anybody a good life, but it sure ups the odds substantially." Dr. McPherson is the 5th president of the Spencer Foundation, a private foundation based in Chicago that grants funds to support research which contributes to the understanding of education and improvement of its practice. Prior to joining the foundation in 2003, he served as the president of Macalester College in St. Paul, Minnesota for 7 years, the institution that the region president is an alumnus of, I might add. A nationally known economist whose expertise focuses on the interplay between education and economics, Dr. McPherson spent the 22 years prior to his Macalester presidency as professor of economics, chairman of the economics department, dean of the faculty at Williams College in Williamstown, Massachusetts, certainly one of the great places in the world for those of you who may not have had a chance to be there. He holds a BA in mathematics, an MA in economics, and a PhD in economics, all from the University of Chicago. And incidentally, Dr. McPherson has a Wisconsin connection. He's a Milwaukee native and attended Rufus King High School. So welcome back, Mike, to your native state. We invited him today to talk about the findings of Crossing the Finish Line. In the book, Dr. McPherson and his fellow authors examine the effect of a really wide variety of variables, including parental education, family income, race and gender, high school grades, test scores, financial aid, characteristics of the universities attended on retention and graduation rates in public universities across the country. I expect the ensuing discussions that we'll have today and I hope in the future will enrich our own understanding of this very complex issue, which we are very much grappling with as part of the growth agenda for Wisconsin, as Chuck indicated, and we'll come back with some new developments in that regard toward the end of the year with this board. So one of the things that I've found in reading Mike's book is that it brings together, for I think the first time, in my experience anyway, an incredibly large amount of data from a lot of databases that have been out there, but not quite brought together and analyzed in the way he has managed to do in this book on questions of retention and graduation. And in doing that, I think has provided a set of evidences for the basic arguments we've been making in the growth agenda for 4 or 5 years now in Wisconsin, and on how we need to get to those goals of the growth agenda. It's always good if public policy is based on evidence rather than wishful thinking or something worse. And I think Mike and his authors have made a great contribution to American higher education in the country in providing a really solid, deep, thoroughgoing base of evidence to get at what I don't believe is the major challenge in higher education for this country, and one of our major challenges as a nation. How do we break through that plateau of 38 or 39% of our population with a college education where we've been stuck for the last 15 years and get back to increasing the percentages of college-educated people in our population. So I've asked Mike to speak for about a half hour and then leave the second half hour of his time for a conversation around all the provocative data and analysis I know he'll provide. So with that, it's my pleasure to formally introduce and ask him to come forward for his presentation, Dr. Michael McPherson.
I need some help getting this to full screen. Thank you. We didn't write a book about technology for very good reasons. That's actually very easy to do. I'm quite happy to be here, and my two colleagues and I were particularly happy to learn more about the great focus that this university system has put on the challenge of improving college completion. And if our work can in any way help you in that effort, we'll be pleased. We're excited that state systems are paying attention to the work that we have recently published. And in fact, my colleagues, Bill Bowen and Matt Shingos, are in Ohio today for an event at Ohio State University, which is analogous to what's going on here. And I do have to add that I have multiple connections to the University of Wisconsin system. Not only am I a Milwaukee resident, my brother, late brother, and my sister both have degrees from University of Wisconsin campuses, Madison and Milwaukee. My brother was, before his death, a professor of electrical engineering at UW in Milwaukee. And I recently married a woman named Sandy Baum, whose father was Werner Baum, who was the chancellor of the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. So blood and marriage connected to this system. In setting out to produce this work, we had the benefit of cooperation from a great many universities in states around the country. We focused on public higher education basically because that's where the students are. They are the vast majority of American college students. And we got about 20 so-called flagship universities from around the country to contribute data on all the students who entered in 1999 and followed them for 6 years thereafter. And you'll see that the University of Wisconsin-Madison is one of the schools that cooperated in that effort. We also, in 4 states, were able to get similar data on all of the students in all of the public campuses in those states. So altogether, we had data on some 200,000 students, looking semester by semester at how they progressed or didn't progress to their degrees. Why did we focus on this problem? Well, you probably understand these issues as well as any, but there are 2 closely interconnected problems that we identified. One is this dramatic slowdown, really halt in growth of educational attainment in the United States. This shows the birth years of people who, and what their educational attainment was at age 35. And you can see the steady march for almost 100 years of improvement, which for people who were born about 1950, went to college about 1970 for the most part, just ended. We've really been on a plateau since then, while other countries have continued to forge ahead. Now, not only is the overall level of attainment stagnant, but the inequality in attainment, the stratification, is just dramatic. If you look on this chart, you'll see that comparing bachelor's degree attainment, for those families where neither parent graduated from college and where the parents are in the bottom quartile of the income distribution, only 9% attain a bachelor's degree. Over at the other end, if you have a college graduate parent and you're in the top income quartile, you have better than a 2/3 chance of having a college degree. Now, this is distressing from an equity point of view, but the reality is, if we're going to increase educational attainment dramatically, we have to address these disparities. We can't solve the problem simply by doing better with the groups that have traditionally done well. We need to overcome this deep challenge that we face. Now, we think, although I don't have a separate slide on this, that long time to degree, as well as low levels of attainment, is a worry. We found in our data that students typically take 5 or 6 years, not 4 years, to graduate. And this is costly. It's costly for the students and their families. It's costly for the years of being a college graduate that they give up. And it's costly for these systems, because these students continue to take courses, use resources, and if we're going to use resources more efficiently, moving people through more efficiently would help greatly. We studied dropout and saw that some people have had the impression that basically the challenge is to get people past the first year. What this shows is, first, of course, that the lower your socioeconomic status, the more likely you are to drop out. But it's a steady march. This is showing how the total dropout continues to grow through the 4 years and beyond. And it's a reminder that retaining people in college is a challenge throughout the college career. It's not one to be focused simply on first year and second year students. So that's the problem. What did we figure out might be done about it? First, we want to cite a problem that came to seem to us to be of great importance and somewhat neglected. We were looking at the destinations, the college destinations of students, in terms of whether they were going to the most challenging places that would be willing to admit them. And a big thing that we found is a problem at the application stage, not at the acceptance stage, that particularly among lower income students, they simply, in many cases, didn't apply to the strongest institutions that would have been in their choice set if they had had the awareness and the judgment to make that application. The problem is really concentrated in the lower income portion of the population. What we show in this graph is the percentage of students who aim lower than they could, the undermatched students in the way that we defined it. We see that for low-income students, more than half of them miss out on some of these opportunities, while for those in the top income quartiles, the great majority go to the more demanding places that would admit them. Now, why does this matter so much? It matters because the other thing we found was that your odds of graduating from college are much better if you go to more selective places, provided you qualify for admission. This is even after taking account of differences in qualifications. A similarly prepared student entering a lower selectivity institution is less likely to graduate. So on the left, we show the graduation probability, the 4-year and the 6-year graduation probability for students who went to what we call a Select B, a less selective institution, who could have been admitted to a Select A institution, compared to that for similar students who went to the more selective institution. And it turns out that the difference is substantial. So for a 4-year graduation, fewer than half will graduate if they go to the less selective institution, and more than half if they go to the more selective. Now, one focus of attention here certainly has to be, what is it about those more selective places that the less selective places might learn from? How do we get the less selective places to be more successful? And I know that's a big focus in the efforts that are going on in Wisconsin. But another, we think, very important question is, how do we help guide young people, particularly from disadvantaged backgrounds, to better understand the opportunities that they have? We have colleagues in Chicago who have looked at these same problems in depth for Chicago public school students. We see students who could readily be admitted to the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, to the University of Illinois in Chicago, to other institutions of that caliber, to the University of Wisconsin at Madison, the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee, who are attending a local 2-year campus. And the chances that they will translate that initial attendance decision into graduation are pretty low. So why are they doing that? We think one big challenge is to get better advice to students in high school and to reach their families as well as to reach the students themselves. But also universities, we think, could do more collectively to help students understand. Not so much competing to get students to their own campus, but helping them understand the importance of making the choice well more generally. This is one big problem that we identified. A second important thing that is the other half of the sorting problem. We first were talking about how students sort themselves through the choices they make. The other half of that is how universities sort students. Which ones are they willing to admit? And the two big factors that drive admissions decisions are students' high school GPAs and their admissions test scores, typically the SAT or the SAT. And we were able in this large sample of students to take a look and see how much does your probability of graduating from college depend on your test scores, depend on your high school grades. And a very important result in our view is that if you're trying to predict who is a likely graduate, high school grades do much more for you than test scores do in making that prediction. In the graphs here, we are showing for a given incremental change in your test score or your high school grades, what is the incremental effect on your college graduation probability. And we have this for various classifications of schools, more selective and less selective flagships, the more selective and less selective schools in the state systems. And very consistently, the incremental boost you get in college success prediction is 4 times to 10 times greater when you focus on the high school grades than on the test scores. It doesn't mean you should ignore test scores altogether. It doesn't mean you shouldn't ask for them. But it does mean that in making your decisions, you're going to learn a lot more about whether you're admitting students who will continue to succeed if you focus on students who succeeded in high school. Not surprising, really, because success in high school grades depends on content knowledge, on persistence, on resilience, on staying with tasks. Those are things that may not show up in test scores, but they do show up in college graduation as well. Some people worry about using high school grades because they fear that grading standards are all over the map, and you can't really tell how good a student somebody is simply by looking at a GPA number. Well, what we found is that even when you ignore differences in high schools, which is what this graph that I have on the screen now does, it just treats every 3.0 as the same no matter where it is. It's still true that high school grades work substantially better as incremental predictors of success than test scores do. If you add information about the individual high schools, you expand the difference even more, which is not terribly surprising. But even without that, you get a very good prediction. And in fact, what we see in these graphs is that once you've controlled for the characteristics of the high school, the test scores don't add anything. In fact, they pick out people who are a little less likely to graduate. And the reason for that is what the test score is basically telling you is how good is the high school the person went to, not anything further about the person. So what we think the lesson is here is that the impression that even a very weak student at a weak high school, at an inner city high school in Chicago, that such a very weak student can turn up with a high grade point average just isn't right. It appears to be the case that schools still have meaningful grading standards, even in very tough environments. So we think that's a lesson that universities should reflect on. The last point I want to make on this line of thinking about selectivity is this issue of 2-year versus 4-year institutions as starting points for the bachelor's degree. Now, I want to underscore here that many people go to 2-year colleges, called community colleges in most states, but Wisconsin being individuated, not called community colleges in Wisconsin. Many people go to those schools for a lot of different reasons. I know my brother, when he was teaching at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, taught electrical engineering to students who were going to the Milwaukee Area Technical College in the summers. And these were mostly adults who were trying to get some additional training in particular technical skills. So community colleges actually are asked probably to do too many different things. But one of the things is the so-called transfer function, to focus on students who aim to get a bachelor's degree. And we looked in our data at students with similar characteristics, grades, test scores, things like that, and looked at what their results were after 6 years if they started at a community college or if they started at a 4-year college, after controlling for these differences in their personal characteristics. And we found a huge graduation advantage from starting at a 4-year college. And we found that that graduation advantage was sustained if you looked at full-time students and excluded the part-time students. So it's not simply a matter of going more slowly. Now, these results are from North Carolina. Other researchers have gotten similar results in Illinois, in California, in Ohio. The Wisconsin system is conceived differently in some important ways. It would be valuable to do a study like this in Wisconsin to see if the results are similar. But again, we don't think that even if these results hold, that means that 2-year colleges or community colleges don't deserve our support, cannot be made better. What we do think is if you're trying to advise a person about what's the best strategy for getting a BA in 6 years, it looks like it's not starting at a 2-year college. Now, the other point that I want to turn to is one that some of our critics said should have been the only point in the book. The very first blog comment in the Chronicle of Higher Education after the notice of our book appeared was, "What's wrong with these idiots?" Perhaps a good point, but what's wrong with these people? Don't they understand that the only thing that matters is money? All of these choices they're trying to explain, all of the outcomes that they're trying to explain, it's all about money. Well, we don't think that's right, in fact, and we think there is a lot that can be done, as I've tried to indicate, in high schools, in colleges, in other parts of the system to improve things other than simply spending money. But we were very interested in the question of how does financial aid and college pricing affect people's graduation probabilities. You know, if you look at the overall evidence, we know from the slides I showed you and from numbers you folks look at all the time that the chances you're going to get a college degree are much lower if you come from a lower income family. We know that a lot of those income effects occur before you ever get to college. We know that students from disadvantaged backgrounds have lower test scores and lower grades. We know they have worse opportunities in the summers. They have a lot of challenges well before they reach college. But it's very important to understand that even after you control for all that and compare people who have the same grades and the same test scores, it still turns out that family income matters. You cannot make that income impact disappear. And we think there are probably two important reasons for that. One is simple. Many people do really face financial constraints which make it difficult for them to afford the places where they have the best chances of success. And they may feel they have no choice but to go to the closest, cheapest alternative, even if that's not best for them. But we think there's also a big problem that families don't know what their options really are. You know, the financial aid system, which I've worked in financial aid for 35 years, and I'm afraid in some terrible way I've contributed to the fact that we have built the most complicated, opaque, incomprehensible system for getting money to pay for college that you could imagine. And there are probably people working right now to make it a little more complicated if they can. But simplifying this, making the messages clearer, making the whole thing more predictable, we think could make a real difference. And in fact, we think that the failure of people to know how they can get the kind of help they need to pay for college is one of the big factors underlying the undermatch phenomenon that we talked about earlier. People just don't think they can afford to go away to school. They don't think they can afford certainly a private college, even though there may well be a lot of financial aid available if people actually go to that college. But another factor is, for the money that you do have, where do you put that money? Who gets the money, and what difference does that make? So how is the financial aid and the low prices, if you have low prices, how does that targeting matter? Well, we were able to address that question by thinking about the fact that the in-state tuition, after allowing for student aid, differs quite a bit from one state to another in our data. So some states have low tuition, maybe not much state government and institutional student aid. Other states may have high tuition, but very generous student aid given through the state government or given through the institutions. What we were interested in is the net price when you take both those things into account. And the question we asked ourselves is, suppose you grow up in a low net tuition state or in a high net tuition state. What difference does that make to your chances of graduating from the flagship university in that state? And what difference does it make whether you come from a high-income family or a low-income family? So what we were able to do was to ask, for lower-income students, let's say the bottom income quartile, we could look at what net price did students typically face in each of the states where our flagship institutions were located, and did those differences in net price influence those students' graduation rates? That's what's on this chart that's in front of you now. Now, these net prices are negative because most students in the bottom income quartile get enough aid at a public institution to pay their tuition and help with living costs. So it shows up as a negative net tuition. And what we graph here is, how does the graduation rate for students attending these institutions line up with the net price that they present to their students? And what we see here in this graph is that the higher the net price, which is the further it is to the right, the lower the graduation rate. Now, you might get that net price with a low tuition, you might get that net price with high tuition and a lot of aid, but the net price matters. And if you can make it cheaper for families, they're more likely to complete. That's the bottom of the income distribution. What if you look at the top of the income distribution? This looks at the net price faced among families from the top income quartile in the same way. And we found no relationship between the price for the top families and their likelihood of graduating. The implication that we draw from that is that paying attention to putting the dollars where they matter is very important. Now, notice that a low tuition policy works across the board. It puts the dollars, it makes life easier for low-income people, and it makes life easier for much higher-income people. The higher-income people like that, of course, but it doesn't seem to affect their behavior. For the lower income people, there is a bang for the buck. The student aid strategy, if it's targeted toward people with need, appears more likely to make a real difference. So we think states and institutions, public institutions, should pay attention if they want to raise their graduation rates to where they are providing their help. One further element on the financial aid side that we would want to emphasize. For the most part, it's best if financial aid is delivered simply by formulas that people can understand, and if it's reliable from one year to the next so that you're able to predict and plan in order to do it. But we do think that if you think about the fact that for low-income families, what would look to a wealthier family like a blip in their lives, you know, an unexpected medical expense, somebody gets furloughed from a job for a period of time, they have resources they can draw on. For a low-income family, that's the kind of thing that can make you drop out. That, at best, is going to slow you down, so it takes you longer to graduate, and at worst, maybe you don't graduate at all. So having some discretionary money, which can be used in a flexible way to help people through unexpected difficulties, we think is a wise policy. The University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill has experimented with doing this as part of the Carolina Covenant program, and we don't have quantitative evidence on that at this point, but the people who work in the program report that it makes quite a bit of difference. So I want to just conclude there. I think there are probably 25 more slides here that I could share with you, but everybody's appetite for such things is limited. And just make a broad policy comment in conclusion, and it's one that leads me to feel great sympathy for the challenges that people in your position face, whether your position is as a leader of one of these institutions or as trustees, overseers, regents of the system. We do seem, at least for the moment, to have kind of gotten it in American society that the future of this society depends on doing a better job with education at all levels. A lot of energy and a lot of talk, at least, is going into this in national policy circles, both improving grade schools and high schools, which is essential, and getting better graduation performance at the post-secondary level. So it's great. We have this on the agenda. People are thinking hard about how to make it happen. This sudden, and it really is in many ways a sudden momentum in this direction, runs up against another reality, which is going to be with us for a while. We're broke. I'm sure this is a message you get quite a lot in your lives, and this is not going away anytime soon. We cannot let ourselves believe that even a successful recovery, which will take years, is going to change the fundamental underlying reality that the fiscal situation of state governments, the fiscal situation of the nation, is in extremely tough shape. And so the message that is really coming from the general populace is, we want you folks to do more, and in order to help you to do more, we're going to give you less. Now, this is a very, very tough set of challenges. I think it implies that anybody who is in these positions of responsibility has to certainly make the case for resources to accomplish the tasks that lie before them, but also has to recognize that you're not going to get greatly improved performance from simply greatly larger dollars. We're going to have to find ways to innovate, to discover things that are successful, to open up sacred cows for discussion that have been very difficult to open up. And that's going to persist. This is a decade-long challenge, or a generation-long challenge, not a matter of holding your breath till you get past the current recession. So I hope that some of the things we found in our book will help you face these very tough challenges. Certainly everything we found underscores that the work that you all have before you at the nation's public universities is extremely important and difficult work for our society. We honor you for taking it, and we feel relieved that we don't have your jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for that very thoughtful analysis of some of the key policy issues that we are grappling with intensely right now here. And the remark about sacred cows put me in mind of the comment that in really tough times, even sacred cows are lunch prospects. We want to open it up now and let the Regents, Chancellor, Provost jump in and engage Dr. McPherson in the discussion. Regent Smith.
If I could ask you a little bit more on the lengthy time to degree issue that you raised, because actually in one of our committees yesterday we had quite a discussion about this as a proposal that this campus is going to be coming forth with to this board in the coming months, we think. And that was the time to degree was a major focus of our discussion yesterday. And I wonder if you could elaborate a little bit on why you think that has occurred, possible solutions to that. Seems like that's one of the main parts of the board.
It's difficult to know all of the factors that have produced this, and it's a very widespread phenomenon in the United States. One stinging comment that one of us heard from a student at a major public university, I think addresses one real aspect of the problem. The student said, "Look, graduating in 4 years is like leaving the party at 10:30. There's a lot that's appealing about being in college, although it can be very difficult, and I don't mean to dismiss the big challenges that people face. But I think a strong cultural expectation that you're going to move through to completion seems to be one important factor that people encounter along the way. And I think some places do better than others at creating a sense that you enter with a cohort, you progress in a regular way through that cohort, and everybody thinks you're going to complete. The financial pressures can work in either way. If the financial pressures induce you to work too many hours, that is something that we think can really slow your progress. And it's possible to borrow too much money to pay for college. It is also possible, and a big risk, to borrow too little, to say, rather than going into debt, I'm going to try to make the money now. And the fact is, you can't make the money as fast without a bachelor's degree as you can with one. So that's a trade-off that people need to think about. I think another thing, and I can't claim that we can give you this kind of quantitative evidence on all of these. We spent some time interviewing people. All of us who are authors have lived in universities for most of our lives, so some of this is simply impressionistic. But students change their minds a lot. Students don't always have a clear picture of what the right strategy is in terms of course taking to reach the goals that they want to have. Counseling and advice and simplifications of the ground rules for how you move through, I think, can make a real difference. I think particularly for first-generation college students, I think a much more pervasive problem is those of us who get used to being inside of institutions like big, complicated universities forget how mysterious they look from the outside. Almost every time I'm at a university campus now that I've become so aware of these issues, I think about this point. I was at Stanford the day before yesterday because we were naming a chair that the Spencer Foundation had awarded to the university. Don't get your hopes up. It's the only chair we've ever named representing UW. And it was a pouring rain. I had my umbrella out. And I was trying to figure out what building I was supposed to get to. There were no darn names on the darn buildings because everybody knows where they are, right? Because we all live here and we know where Gardenia Hall is, so why would we need a sign? This place is great. I drove here from the Twin Cities, and UW-Eau Claire, Visitor Center, everything was signed, and I honor you for that. But that's just a little indication that we don't think about what it looks like if you've never been to one of these places. You don't think about what it looks like if you can't call your mom, who is a college graduate, and ask her, should I really double major? It's going to take me an extra year. Does that make sense or not? And I just think we really need to put ourselves in the shoes of people who don't know how this even works. And I think that would help as well.
Going down this side and then come back. Regent Womack.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I actually appreciate what you have written in the book. And, we've read many books. But I think that you have revealed some compelling issues that I haven't read before. And two particularly. One was the undermatch, the concept of undermatching. And the other one is the concept of having some weight to families where one person in the family has a degree.
Yeah.
I think that is so very important. And so I say to you, are we asking the right questions in the admissions process? I don't know that comes up in the admissions process. And that makes a very, very big difference. Are we asking the right questions in the admissions process?
Well, the big message that we bring about the admissions process is, are you giving adequate weight to high school grades? I would hope that universities would not try to raise their graduation rates. I'm sure that's not what you mean by screening away from people whose parents didn't go to college. We certainly wouldn't want that. But I think, we do have to pay attention to people who have overcome big challenges and put weight on that. And actually, I think a successful high school performance is a sign of that. And I think paying better attention to that is significant. I want to underscore that what we found, much to our surprise, is that the big thing that differentiates a first-generation college family from one where a parent has a college degree, it's the degree. Turns out there's not much difference at all between students whose parents have had some college but not completed, and parents who've had no college. It is, in fact, crossing that finish line which picks out the people who are more likely to succeed and who differ in other ways. I think it's, it wasn't as clear to me when we went into this work that it's not just that one more year of attainment is one more year of attainment. It's not that. It's certainly true that 13 years of school are better than 12 and 14 are better than 13. But completing something, that's a whole other thing. And that's an achievement of a kind that I think is qualitatively different.
Regent Loftus.
Well, thank you very much for being here, and thank Chuck for arranging this. It was pretty special. One quick question and then a question on the 2-year. The quick question is, have any high school systems asked you to present?
I have talked to individuals in high school systems, curricular leaders and others, and we are actually in very serious discussion with the public schools in Chicago about actually mounting an intervention to try to improve college counseling in high schools. So yeah.
On the 2-year graduation rate, and in the book you say, well, yes, there are students from 2-year institutions that transfer and they have a good graduation rate. Although that isn't the issue. It's those that do not graduate. We have embarked on a multitude of strategies to enhance transfer opportunities. Could you speak a little bit more about the transfer strategy versus really focusing on students to get them into the 4-year institutions in the first place?
Well, I have 2 points, I think, that I can offer about that. One is that we have to recognize that state systems have made big decisions about where to put institutions and how many institutions of different kinds to have. So although I feel great confidence in saying that if I'm advising this individual or that individual, they should make the choice of 4-year. To say that a state should somehow expand its 4-year system and contract its 2-year system to make that happen is no kind of realistic near-term strategy. So people are going to continue to operate dual strategies. From my experience and conversations I've had with people in the 2-year systems around the country, I think one of the big challenges is 2-year colleges do serve so many different purposes, and they have so many different populations with different goals that are cheek by jowl within the same institution that I think it's very difficult for them to put a spotlight on that particular transfer function and those who have a genuine commitment to that being their aim, particularly in a society where the right thing to say is that you want a bachelor's degree, and whether or not you really believe you're going to get it is another question. My sense is that within community colleges, that I think they could benefit by thinking hard about how they can kind of differentiate their functions and put a focus on different groups in a clear way. Even honors colleges and 2-year colleges are a possibility. New York City has launched an experimental new community college which has the same admissions rules as others, but will only admit students who are able and willing to go full-time. And that's an audacious, aggressive strategy which a lot of people think is politically questionable, and there are a lot of issues surrounding that. But I think thinking about getting at the people for whom this is a serious mission and helping them achieve that mission, it seems to me something that's worth thinking about. Another big thing which the Gates Foundation is working on, which I think is promising, is to address the questions of remediation in a different way. That their idea is just-in-time remediation. That is, if the way things tend to work now in developmental courses or remedial courses is if you don't do well on a test of high school math, you take high school math again. Didn't work the first time, doesn't make you feel good to take high school math again, and it costs a lot of time and money. But suppose that you're taking a course in basic science which requires you to know how to do simultaneous equations, or how to calculate a cosine, something like that. Well, the idea is to just teach them that and teach it in a context which makes it clear why you're learning it. And see if you can be much more efficient in your use of resources for developmental courses, which of course are a huge burden in higher education generally, and particularly a burden in the 2-year colleges. So if we could do better with that, I don't think in principle, we certainly don't believe we have evidence that in principle you can't make the transfer system work well. We do have a lot of evidence, I think, in many states that it's not a very effective strategy the way things work now. So something really has to be done.
Chancellor Wilson.
First of all, I assume you can hear me here. But first of all, I do appreciate your being here. I thought the book was thought-provoking. I'm the chancellor of the UW Colleges and UW Extension, and those two institutions are extremely unique in higher education in America. The UW Colleges has no peer nationally, and UW Extension has no peer. And so I would offer certainly a different hypothesis for those high-performing students that come to the UW colleges who could be admitted to UW-Madison or some of the other more selective UW institutions initially. And the hypothesis would run counter to what I think you have uncovered in community colleges across the nation, because those colleges have such myriad missions. my hypothesis is that if indeed we did a study like that here in Wisconsin, that we would find that those students who are coming to us, who are high-performing students out of high school, who intend to go on to the flagship, actually graduate with a high degree of success. And the hypothesis would be supported by what I think would be the way in which we select our faculty for those institutions. 82% of those faculty members have their PhDs or terminal degrees from some of the finest institutions in the country. We have a singular mission. It is a transfer mission. It is core education, and we think we do that uncommonly well. And so I certainly would just like to put on the radar screen that the way I think the students in community colleges across the nation perhaps behave in the college-going and graduation rates may not hold true for what we see here in the state of Wisconsin.
I think that comment's entirely fair. And when Kevin and I talked 2 weeks ago, I went on at length about how much I don't know about the University of Wisconsin system. And all I intend to do is tell you what we found looking at other states and certainly looking within our data at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I don't claim any expertise. What you say may very well be true. I would say two things about that. One is, please get somebody to do that study. And if it turns out that that study comes out the way you're forecasting, let's get it around to the rest of the country. If this is a unique model and it works, people are desperate for a model that works. And the things you've said, I think, do mark off the Wisconsin system from at least most others. I think Penn State actually has something that bears some analogy because they have these 2-year satellite theater campuses as well. But yeah, absolutely, we don't. I would not mean to imply that what we found to be true in other circumstances applies everywhere. Thank you.
Chancellor Levin-Stankiewicz, and then we'll come over to this side of the board table and see further questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kirsten. As you heard, this campus is engaged right now in looking at a proposal, part of the goal of which is to improve four-year graduation rates and overall graduation rates and affordability. As we've been meeting with alumni, students, and others, we hear many of those anecdotes. The version I hear is, well, yeah, I stayed for 5 years because it didn't really cost much to do so. And in preparing this, we've done a lot of research that looks at net tuition or net pricing, particularly when we compare, say, ourselves as a selective institution with comparably selective private institutions. The graduation rates are night and day on a 4-year basis. I don't know if you could address that at all. But I would also make a suggestion, and that is that the net pricing include the tax credits that have occurred in this country over a period of time that I think you would find further advantage the upper quartiles of the population on a low tuition model. But is the difference between the public and private graduation rates the culture? Is it in part the pricing? Is it a part of the financial pressures? Is it a part of the resources that those pricing gives those institutions?
Yeah, I think you raise very good points, and I'm confident that you're right about the tax credits. If we didn't have a way of incorporating them in the data set that we have, but the tax credits certainly tilt in favor of people who are sort of in that third quartile, like not the very highest incomes because they don't qualify, but that above the average, but not at the farthest end group. I think that's right. I mean, I think it's, when I was the president of a private college in Minnesota, one of the things that our advertising dined out on was the idea that 4 years at one of our places should be compared to 6 years at one of their places. Certainly the privates had on average quicker time to degree, and one suspects that money had something to do with that. it's such a multivariate comparison. The institutions are different in size, different in populations, and so on. I wouldn't want to generalize too hastily, but I mean, it costs. It's not just or even mainly the money cost of that extra year. That is an extra year that you're not going to have a college graduate job. And the fact is that it's going to take you, the typical person after graduating from college doesn't really settle into a college graduate career for several more years. You know, you try things out, you kind of build some more experience capital. So you delay that even further. You have people who are getting into their early 30s before they're really getting the benefits of their educational investment if they drag it out. You know, maybe making that message more compelling. It's really very costly to you, even if the tuition is low and it's sort of affordable for you to keep going. That could be, certainly could be part of it. It's tricky if you start playing games with the prices. You know, like raise that price for the 5th year. You know, economists are so good at identifying unintended consequences that you can produce when you do things like that. So I want to think very hard about doing something like that.
Just a comment. I don't think we have anybody from UW-Madison here today. I think Paul's not here. I think our Madison colleagues would tell us that they find that their out-of-state students who pay 3 times as much as the highest tuition in the system, compared with their in-state Madison students, do graduate significantly more quickly. Yeah, it's not because they're smarter. We'd hasten to add. Regent Joe.
Yeah, first I want to thank Chuck and Kevin. I think this is probably the most interesting report that I've heard since I've been on the board. And particularly the data-driven analysis, I think, is very important to everything that we do. In fact, I think the slides that you had up there about the relationship between net price and where you were in the income quartiles is sort of an endorsement of the Madison initiative that Chancellor Martin put forward, where income was taken as a factor in tuition, in the recent tuition rates. I think it's also interesting that the flattening out of educational attainment that started in the 70s is related to a lot of factors, probably income, distribution in this country, decline in real wages, as Brian mentioned, tax policies, decrease in unionization rates. I think all those things would probably be correlated. My question, I guess, would be more for the system in terms of our admission policies. Where are we in terms of the difference between test scores and high school GPA, which I think is some compelling data that you had on that also.
I might turn to Senior Vice President Martin for that answer, Regent Chu.
Several years ago, this board confirmed or affirmed the holistic admissions policy that all of our campuses use. As a result of that, we no longer use, we still require the ACT or SAT, but we no longer use that as a cutoff. We look at the entire application that a student brings forward. High school GPA is very heavily weighted in that process, but it's one factor among many. And test scores do continue to be a factor, but it's an attempt to look at the whole picture of what a student brings forward.
If I just follow up, and Dr. McPherson, is that consistent with your recommendations in terms of admissions policies?
I think in our view that is the right kind of admissions policy to have. It's a different kind of task to figure out what the weights actually turn out to be. I know I have a good friend who is a president of a college, and he actually sits in on a number of admissions meetings every year. I couldn't stand doing that when I was president, but that's just different. Listening to the team around the table making choices, and he told me that he thinks that they weight the test scores a lot more than they think they do. And it's because that number is so salient. It's just so, you read a letter of recommendation, you talk about the great things this kid did over the summer and so on, and that's all kind of qualitative. You say, yeah, but look, he has a 780 verbal, and that's crunchy. So the only way to really find that out is to take your data and estimate, what we estimated, which is what is the incremental difference that it makes if you get, I think that kind of exercise is worth doing. And in big places, it's doable.
And Regent Drew, I will also tell you that, as I read the book, and again this morning as listening to Dr. McPherson, I'm writing down, we need to be talking to the admissions officers. We need to make sure they're reading the same things we're reading. We need to do the analyses of our own data that will get us the kind of information that you have generated for a larger universe out there. So I think we're on the same track.
Great.
And Kevin, and finally, go Rufus King.
Regent Bartel.
Dr. McPherson, I have two questions related to the slide that you have up on the screen here, the analysis of graduation rate by price. By price. And the first part of that is you use net price being tuition and taking into account financial aid. Did any of your analysis break that down? I mean, is there a relationship to tuition and graduation, financial aid and tuition? Not the net price, but the tuition price. Right. Tuition price is something we have some control of.
So you have some control over that, but you do.
As a state, we do.
Yeah. Although we have a great amount of data in this study, we only have 21 data points for this analysis, one per unit, one per flagship university. So we couldn't look at separate effects. If there is a separate effect, one would expect that it's an information effect. That is, that people may know the price and behave in response to the price, while the student aid stuff is fuzzier and they don't know what they're really going to get. So it's possible that there is an effect like that, but we didn't have the data for that particular thing to be able to separate it.
And the second part being focusing on the financial aid. Financial aid in this state, and I think many other states, is based upon the expected family contribution to the education.
Some of it is.
And I guess the question is there a better, more precise way to focus financial aid on lower income families?
Well, the state student grant program is driven by the expected family contribution, and personally, I think that's fine as an index of financial capacity. But it is the case that in the university's own use of grant resources, half of all of the aid that is given without regard to people's ability to pay. Now, if you want to target more money on people who need help, you can change that.
Okay, thank you.
Regent Crane.
I want to ask a question about the use of the GPA and its weighting as well. And I'm assuming, and especially as I hear being reminded about the holistic approach is the policy here, is that it isn't the number, the GPA number, it's the analysis of what that is to some degree. I would think if a student in 9th grade, for all kinds of reasons, has a failing year, and yet in the progress of what happens over the high school career, and whether or not the student is taking the load that the student is taking and the difficulty of the classes, all of those things are a part of looking at the grade, at the high school record, let me put it that way. Yeah. Academic record.
Having more information always helps, and it's certainly right that particularly it appears that students doing well on advanced placement tests, not whether they took advanced placement courses, but whether they did well on the tests, adds actually more to predicting success than test scores do, but less than grades do. Those refinements are certainly valuable, but I would underscore that if you just use the plain old grade point average and don't mess with it at all, you get quite a bit of predictive power. So we always want to push further, and we want to take account of special cases, but it's pretty good.
Let me jump over to Chancellor Gallo, and then we'll come back to Regent Vasquez. Joe.
I was eating at a restaurant in La Crosse the other day, and the food was served by one of our students, and I recognized the young man, and I said hello, and I said, how often do you work here? And he said, well, about 30 hours a week. And I said, wow, and I said, the research shows that's not what we would like you to be doing. And he said, well, this is my choice, and it's what I want to do. And it reminded me, students do make decisions about their time frame. And there was this little study the other day I saw on Inside Higher Ed that tried to get at this for economists. I guess surveyed students and why do you work, and they actually challenged the notion that it's affordability, that maybe it's more students want to have their disposable income to do the things they want to do. I'm delighted. We have a rather large group of students from UW-Eau who come to Regent meetings. I don't know whether, could you give us some insight into your view on the time frame? Do people look at a 4-year degree as the ultimate way to do it, or are they taking longer? Why is that?
Right, I'm Harley Walls, I'm from the UW-Eau. I would say students do aim for graduating 4 years. However, I find myself in a special situation right now. I have the choice of staying 4 years and getting an internship during summer, or turning all of my credits into 3 and a half years, and then doing relationships left, or my 4th year. And I guess in the end, I would say, personally, I've decided that I would rather stay an extra semester so that I can take my time, work on getting better grades, working with things like the GRE and things like that. But I would say that it is something that you aim for, but it's still not going to happen.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I would say the biggest hole in the sort of financial part of our study, which was the part I was mainly responsible for, is that we just don't have, and it's very hard to get, good data on how much people actually work. There's probably no place at the university that those 30 hours a week is written down, unless this is a financial aid student who has to report it in that way. And it's a big question. One thing is students may, in some cases, have an inability to defer gratification. They want that 42-inch flat-screen TV now rather than after they're the vice president of a company or something. But that's too easy for old fogies to say, and students may just have different values. They may organize their lives differently. I worry these days that there's a kind of an industry which is devoted to terrifying people about the idea of borrowing to pay for college, by highlighting the 10% or so of borrowers who really borrow too much. And they scare people away from what can be a very sensible thing to do, right? I mean, you borrow to buy a house, you borrow to buy a car. This is more important than a car, and as important as a house. If you're going to pay for it over a period of years, it makes perfect sense to do it as long as you're sensible about it. But I think some people are really very afraid, what economists call debt aversion, that, and particularly, disadvantaged families who may have had bad experiences with the credit system tend to shy away from that. And we actually have the federal loan system, I think, is going to be improved by the legislation that's on the way if that all happens. But it's pretty good now. and you can borrow a reasonable amount of money with reasonable assurances about protections if you run into tough times. So I do think sometimes people are making ill-informed choices, or maybe just valuing creature comforts over moving forward.
We're going to need to let Dr. Mathuson go in a very few minutes because he's graciously agreed to meet at Chancellor Stankevich's request with the Eau Claire faculty and staff to have a similar discussion. But I know Regent Vasquez had a question.
Let me start with one comment and a question. The comment is pertaining to my second dear and near institution of adult education, and that's the technical college system. I want to keep reminding us that the system that we have here in Wisconsin, as it was created, it was never created to be a community college system, nor for that matter a junior college system. And so I think we should try and encourage that system continue to be true to its mission, which it's, for me personally, I think it's doing an admirable job in fulfilling its mission. And the enrollments bear that, and the success of the employability of the graduates and students is very evident. So I hope that we don't try to force a system that was never intended to be subservient or to be a transfer system for the university to be moved in that direction. And I think, I'm looking at Chancellor Wilson, I think we should pay maybe more attention to our two-year college system within the university and help it fulfill its mission. The question now is the issue about, from your perspective, how prepared are the public university systems to address this great change that's happening demographic in terms of the presence of people of color, both that are just numerically growing and growing, and the fact that we happen to represent that low income, happen to represent those parents that a high number of parents that are not graduates of in some cases even high schools, and yet we're going to become the larger number in this country. What advice, what observations, what advice can you give us to start, even though we do talk a lot about it, I'm not quite sure we're doing much. We're doing a lot of things, but I'm not sure that what we're doing is sufficient.
I agree. I mean, the biggest challenge in that regard is the Hispanic or Latina population, which is growing very rapidly. And which, although it's a hugely varied population, one has to be careful not to overgeneralize different origins, different results, but includes a whole lot of people who fall into the category of first-generation college, who are disadvantaged, and have the further challenges of negotiating a system which is designed around the English language, and that English is a second language for many folks who are children of immigrants or grandchildren of immigrants and so on. I would say nobody is as prepared as they need to be, and most places aren't as prepared as they think they are. My friend Morty Shapiro, who was just inaugurated as president of Northwestern University, said in his inauguration address that too often we talk about being tolerant, but nobody wants to be tolerated. Right. Everybody is a full citizen. Everybody is a co-owner of the enterprise. Everybody belongs. And I think we all have to, all of us, particularly, if I may be allowed to name my own group, the over 50 white guys, need to take that to heart in a very deep way. And it's not easy psychologically, it's not easy sociologically, and it's not easy analytically. But we have a lot we have to do. Absolutely.
Let me ask if there are any remaining regents who have questions. Tony, Regent Rivers.
Thank you, and thanks for your time this morning. Your comments around the under-reaching of low-income children or high school students in their selection process is something that I've been thinking about a lot, actually spending some time on. about who influences that decision. And I've been spending time in the Milwaukee area, particularly visiting with community-based organizations that really nurture children, get them through high school, and have them achieve at the highest level possible. And it's curious to me. I'm not sure the standard things that we think about who influences holds true anymore. I think the community-based organizations and others. Do you have any thoughts on that issue? Because it's perplexing to me, and it certainly is one of the key issues here.
We have actually thought quite a lot about that, particularly recently, because we're trying to think about what kind of intervention do we think might work in the Chicago Public Schools. And our hunch, what we want to pursue, is the idea that the most credible advice would come from people with similar backgrounds who have made the challenging choice to go to more demanding places. That its peers, I think it's one thing to have the right information, it's another thing to be credible and believable. There is an economist I know did a little study, a pilot study of a program at Amherst College, which is, of course, way on the far elite end of this whole distribution. And what they did was students at Amherst from disadvantaged backgrounds volunteered to call high school students of similar backgrounds who seemed to have a shot at, maybe not at Amherst, but at some selected place. And imagine you get this phone call and you listen to the young woman say, we could never afford it. I could never get in. I don't even know where Amherst is on a map. And this student says, yeah, but I'm you. I was you 3 years ago, and I'm calling you from Amherst. I mean, it's just, my intuition is, it's not a leaflet from the state university. It's not a message from the governor. It's somebody who's been there tell you it can be done. But we'll see what we can do.
That's a good note, I think, to wrap this session up on. I want to thank Dr. McPherson immensely. This has been a really thoughtful, useful discussion that you've led for us. And as any speaker, I think, likes to hear this, especially when you've traveled to be with us, I have no doubt that what we've talked about with you today and your views of it will resonate in the next number of months as we work on some new plans on our growth agenda, educational attainment. So thanks very much. We really appreciate it. Brian, I don't know if you can help him get to the next session. Thank you. I wanted to share a little bit of news from around the system with all of you now. First, this relates directly to what we were just talking about. It appears that we're looking at some pretty positive numbers for enrollments around the UW system. Despite the difficult economy, the overall enrollments at our institutions have not decreased. In fact, they have gone up. It looks like we're on track to break another record with a total headcount enrollment of about 178,000 students across UW System's 26 campuses. That would be a new all-time high, an increase of about 3,000 students from 2008. Now, the data is not yet complete because campuses are still finalizing their numbers after the close of the add-drop period on campuses. They're crunching them. We need to get them and crunch them, but it does look good in that overall sense so far. So we will, of course, share the final figures and our analysis of them, our thoughts about what it all means when the number crunching is completed, but it's a heartening overall number. For additional news, let me begin right here at our host campus, a program at UW-Eau Claire that provides behavior intervention services to young children who are diagnosed with autism will expand thanks to a $263,000 grant from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. According to Dr. Kevin Klatt, who's the director of the Campus Autism Program here, or CAP, the expansion of the program is necessary to provide intervention to a greater number of children in western Wisconsin and to provide more opportunities for university students to engage in supervised clinical work and applied behavior analysis. Now, UW-Eau Claire's psychology department established an undergraduate behavior analysis emphasis in 2000, making it the only undergraduate program of its kind in the UW system. Each semester, 15 to 20 students are involved in the program. And you may have heard in recent news reports, Health and Human Services Secretary Catherine Sebelius has called the uptick in autism diagnoses in recent years, which I think we're all aware of, quote, an urgent public health challenge, unquote. So this is certainly important work. So we congratulate Chancellor Levin Stankiewicz and those involved with the CAP on this campus. UW Parkside's 40 for 40 scholarship drive set a goal of creating 40 new or expanded scholarships during the university's 40th anniversary celebrations last year. I'm happy to report that not only did the campus reach its goal, but it has blown away that marker. To date, 102 new scholarships have been created and more than $400,000 have been raised. On a related note, Parkside has also received a 5-year, $1.6 million Title III grant from the U.S. Department of Education to fund the university's Student Success Initiative. So congratulations to Chancellor W. Ford and UW Parkside. From UW-Madison, we hear that entrepreneurship programs at the Wisconsin School of Business rank among the best in the nation, according to a recently published survey conducted by the Princeton Review and Entrepreneur magazine. The Weinert Center for Entrepreneurship ranks 11th on a list of the top 25 entrepreneurial graduate programs in the country, up from 13th last year. And UW-Madison's undergraduate entrepreneurship program, meanwhile, ranks 16th in the magazine's ranking of the top 25 entrepreneurial undergraduate programs in the United States. So this is the first year that both the graduate and undergraduate programs at the School of Business at Madison have made the top 25. So we congratulate Chancellor Biddy Martin, Dean Michael Netter of the Business School, and I remind the board that in our Growth Agenda action steps, broadening out entrepreneurial education across the system was one of the goals, and this is one good example of how we're accomplishing that. I'm also pleased to report that UW Colleges and UW Extension just last week received the 10th annual Ann Lydecker Educational Diversity Award given by the State Council on Affirmative Action and the Office of State Employment Relations. Many of you will recall that Ann was the chancellor at the University of Wisconsin-River Falls. UW Colleges and UW Extension received the 2009 award for their work with diversity training as part of their Multicultural Awareness Program. The award is presented to state agencies or UW campuses for their strong commitment to the recruitment, retention, and promotion of a diverse workforce as measured by the creation of programs, initiatives, and practices. The Multicultural Awareness Program is a voluntary 2-day workshop provided for employees of colleges and extension, and according to Chancellor David Wilson, more than a third of their 3,000 employees statewide have already participated in the program. That award, by the way, will be officially presented on November 12th. So congratulations to Chancellor Wilson and everybody at colleges and extension who've been part of this. We also have some good news from UW-Milwaukee. Some of you may have noticed that Chancellor Santiago is not here today, and that's because he's out in Washington, D.C. for the public unveiling of UWM's contribution to the Solar Decathlon project. The Solar Decathlon is a global contest in which university students compete to design, build, and operate a solar-powered house more efficiently than other competitors. UW-Milwaukee was chosen by the U.S. Department of Energy as one of the 20 student teams from an international pool to participate in the 2009 event. Each team receives $100,000 from DOE to build an 800-square-foot house powered entirely by solar energy. UWM's Meltwater House, so-called because it's designed to maximize rainwater collection, was recently transported to Washington on 3 semi-trailer trucks, with another 3 trucks carrying the house's foundational supports, 28 solar panels, furniture, appliances, and so forth. So Carlos is now there, along with the School of Architecture and Urban Planning team, as this house is erected on the National Mall, where it will be judged on a range of criteria such as architecture, engineering, and market viability. The results should be announced, we think, Rita, sometime today, and we wish Milwaukee and Chancellor Santiago and Provost Cheng the best of luck, and hope that Carlos is able to drive those semi-trailer trucks back from Washington when it's done. And speaking of new construction, you'll notice that Chancellor Rick Wells, who was here yesterday, is not here today, and that's because Oshkosh is getting ready to celebrate the construction of its first new academic building on that campus since 1971, with a groundbreaking ceremony today. The $48 million building is among the largest single construction projects in the history of northeastern Wisconsin's New North. The new facility will be home to administrative, faculty, and program offices of the College of Business, along with 5 departments and 5 programs of the College of Letters and Science. Other good news, it's estimated that the project will directly and indirectly generate more than 2,000 jobs, including those in construction-related fields such as masonry, electrical, architecture, pipe fitting, and plumbing over the next 3 years, and provide, by doing that, a big boost to the regional economy. So the grand opening is targeted for fall 2011, but they have the initial event today, so we want to congratulate Rick and the whole UW-Oshkosh campus community. And just let me say, I think this is a good reminder that although we justifiably spend a lot of time talking about knowledge economy jobs and the relation of university research to generating those, and the relation of the expertise in the university to helping improve our manufacturing or agricultural output. All of that is very true, but sometimes in saying that we neglect to focus on the job-generating capacity that our capital program with all of the facilities we have across the state generates. And those jobs very often, many of them, the direct ones and the indirect ones, are held by people who don't have PhDs or masters or maybe not a college degree, but need good family-supporting wages, and our capital program provides that for Wisconsin citizens. And we shouldn't forget that part of the economic engine that is the UW. We have another chancellor who's got a good reason for being MIA today, and that's UW Stout's Chuck Sorensen. Another good reason. Chuck is being honored with a Distinguished Alumni Award at Illinois State University, where he received a Master of Science degree. So I think in this case it's okay to talk behind his back and say congratulations. It's a well-deserved honor. And I want to conclude my remarks, President Pruitt, by reading a poem, which I think is a really good fall poem by a poet I've read, I think, to you from before, who's a faculty member at this campus, Max Garland, and I was going to call him and invite him to come, and I forgot to do that. So, but at least you'll hear his voice, and I think it's a very nice seasonal poem. It's called Day So Bright. Was lost, but now I'm found is the shade of orange in the oaks today. Was frost, but now I'm wind is how they move. It makes you want to plant an acorn or something, carve a gourd, trace the veins of a leaf out to the far reaches of space, fork some timothy. Fescue? It's a day so bright you can't help but wish you were downright Amish. Let's build a barn, quick and high, haymaker swings of the hammers like bluebird calls over the stubbled fields. Let there be pies and brush-thick beards and bonnets over the politics. Let the world blink like a stranded grain, the day be sufficient, the feed corn rise to the brim of the crib, the coal of sunset. Let the heart be held still by the work of the day, retracing its route through the muscles, and the night come down like hair undone in the star-like static of the cold. Appropriate for the weather we've been having as well. That concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, President O'Reilly. I think we'll now move to the report of the Capital Planning and Budget Committee. Regent Bartel.
Capital Planning and Budget Committee met yesterday. We approved our September 10th meeting minutes, and we went on to several reports. The first of which was from UW-Eau Claire. Mike Galindo, who is Special Assistant to the Chancellor, and Dr. Beth Helwig, Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, provided the committee with an update on the progress of several recent capital projects. presentation emphasized the natural assets of this campus, the Chippewa River, the hill, Putnam Park. These natural features, though, also present campus planning challenges. As an aside, I would say those of us who attended the UW-Madison and who walked from the Lakeshore Farms over Observatory Hill and over Bascom Hill every day to the east side of the campus didn't shed a lot of tears for these problems that are encountered here. But in any event, the campus is embarking on a master plan and it is in great need of some significant work. The campus has 29 major buildings with an average age of 39 years. The newest academic building is 29 years old. The good news is that UWEC is moving forward right now on a new student union to replace the building that we are now in, as well as a major new academic building in 2011. And in addition, a new child care center will be constructed to replace the old campus school. Dr. Hellwig discussed with us the new student union and the issues that have recently arisen involving the historic council oak tree. I'm not going to get into all of that, but the upshot is that the campus will be re-examining the design and placement of the building and will work with students in finalizing the plan so as to be able to keep to the current schedule for construction, which has them going into the ground by next summer and completing the new union by spring of 2012. This area that this building stands on will become a green space. We were also privileged to hear from Mike Huggins, the Eau Claire city manager, who discussed campus community partnerships, such as the Hobbs Ice Arena. It was very impressive to us what the university and the city, the school district, and other community constituents have been able to accomplish in working together to provide facilities for the benefit of all and to save money for all of the constituents as well. UW South then provided the committee with a presentation on their campus master plan. Diane Moe, who's Vice Chancellor for Administrative Services, discussed the challenges faced by that campus in a very small town of Menominee, including split campus, no public transportation, and the resulting parking problems encountered, and the need to expand student services such as the Student Center and the Sports and Fitness Center. That was all very interesting to the committee. We didn't take any action on those presentations, but we were pleased to have those presentations. The following 5 resolutions that were approved by the Capital Planning and Budget Committee and were now presented as a consent agenda item. Resolution 1.3.D was brought by UW colleges, and specifically the Waukesha campus, requesting authority to enter into a ground lease with the Wildlife in Need Center to construct a wildlife rehabilitation clinic facility at the UW-Waukesha Sherman Field. This project involves a partnership between UW-Waukesha and this nonprofit Wildlife in Need organization, under which as many as 200 students and faculty will be involved in animal research and rehabilitative services in the facility to be constructed on university land with $700,000 in gift funds, which have been raised by the Wildlife in Need organization. It's a win-win, another community partnership that works very well for the university. The terms of that ground lease are being worked out, but I think that will all fall into place very soon. Resolution 1.3.E requests authority to purchase a small parcel of land located on South Chestnut Street in Platteville. And this purchase will complete an assembly of land for a project that will provide a land. It's along Chestnut Street. It will provide access to the campus from Business 151. The cost of the land will be $125,000, of which $39,000 will be gift funds. The acquisition is necessary to support the Grant County Chestnut Street realignment and bridge replacement project, which will replace a deteriorating bridge, and will develop this new and very grand, I hope, entrance to the campus with our roundabout. And Kevin's house is right in the middle of the roundabout. We will have cars going all the way around. Resolution 1.3.F requests authority to increase the project budget and construct the UW-Stevens Point North Campus Chiller project for a total cost of about $8 million, including an increase of $955,000 comprised of a mix of program revenue supported borrowing, program revenue cash, and general fund supported borrowing, a portion of which will be reallocated from the Waste Management Laboratory project, which came in under budget, so part of those funds have already been approved. The project will construct a new North Campus chiller plant to serve 12 student residence halls, a dining center, a recreation center, and future GPR-supported buildings on the north part of campus. The residential living portion of this project will be financed through an increase in room rental rates. All room rental rates will increase on campus by $89 per year, and the rates in those buildings that have the air conditioning will increase by an additional $97 per year, so you pay an additional $97 for air conditioning. The student centers portion of the project will result in a board rate of increase of $15.68 per year, and a segregated fee increase of $3.32 per year, which is a 0.6% increase. The seg fee increase will be subject to the Campus Soup Act and committee approval. Resolution 1.3.G requests authority to construct the UW-Stevens Point Hanson Residence Hall renovation project for a total cost of $4.9 million, program revenue supported borrowing. This is a project that will renovate the third building of a four-building residential hall renovation project that was enumerated in the 2007-09 capital budget. It will upgrade the residence hall heating system, electrical capacity, replace windows, install an elevator, and so forth. And finally, Resolution 1.3.H requests authority to construct all agency maintenance and repair projects, two of them, one the utility project at UW-Madison, and a budget increase for a project at UW-Oshkosh. If you need any more information on any of these projects, we're happy to give it to you, but these five resolutions were passed by the committee, and I now move adoption of resolutions 1.3D, E, F, G, and H.
Support. Thank you, sir. That was a second. Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? You okay, Regent Alkiner, with the roundabout thing? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
One last item. Associate Vice President David Miller reported that the Building Commission approved about $17 million for projects at its September meeting, projects that this board has recommended. And I do thank President Riley for pointing out that these projects all over the state create jobs for Wisconsin residents, and it is a very important part of what we do to support the economy of the state. Mr. Miller also updated us about the progress of our project delivery recommendations. We reported that at the September meeting of the Building Commission, the Commission took action to approve legislation supporting these recommendations that we made for flexibility in project delivery methods. And a bill that is sponsored by the State Building Commission has been introduced in the legislature and has now been assigned to committees. We still have a long way to go on this, but at least we have started on the road to improving the cumbersome and time-consuming procedures that we're stuck with in constructing many of our campus buildings, and we'll keep you informed on that progress and may seek your advocacy at the appropriate time. So, Mr. President, this concludes the report of the Capital Planning and Budget Committee.
Thank you, Regent Bartel. Report of the Education Committee, Regent Crane.
I'm very glad to present the report of the Education Committee yesterday. The Regent participants in that meeting were Vice Chair Jose Vasquez, Mark Bradley, and Tony Evers. We began with a topic that was very closely aligned with what we have already heard this morning. It was the 2009 report on remedial education, which was a report that, in a presentation that we found very informative, thought-provoking, and encouraging as we talked about remedial education in the UW system. This report is presented to the board every 3 years. Associate Vice President Sharon Wilhelm shared the key findings, which can be summed up as follows. All students admitted to UW institutions have the potential to succeed. That is a basic assumption. The majority of students needing remediation complete their remedial requirements in the first year. Students who complete their remedial requirement in the first year are more likely to succeed than students who do not complete their remedial requirement in the first year. Dramatic differences in second-year retention rates between students needing remediation who complete it and those who do not. The upshot and the bottom line is that we know that remediation works. Senior Vice President Martin commented on some system-wide initiatives underway to address and alleviate need for remediation, and those include alignment of high school curricula to post-secondary demands through the American Diploma Project, growth agenda grant support focused on math preparation, many partnerships across educational sectors, including PK-12, the technical system, and the independent colleges and universities in this state, and a new national initiative, Access to Success, which seeks to cut the achievement gap for underserved students in the next decade. We heard from 3 provosts, UW College's Provost Greg Lampe, Green Bay Provost Julia Wallace, and Whitewater Provost Chris Clements, about campus-specific work to help students successfully complete remediation. These were very interesting to us. Some common elements to those programs: experimentation with different formatting for remedial courses in terms of sequencing of math topics, course compression, and self-paced mastery of modules, professional development for faculty teaching these developmental courses, and summer bridge programs and more sustained advising of students needing remediation. We have some innovative programs out there, and they are improving the way remediation is done across the system. Our discussion focused on, for all that remediation works, it remains frustrating to students who do not receive credit, of course, for their remedial courses. This causes them both time and money toward getting into major programs and getting the degrees, and again, it's relevant to this morning's discussion.
And Regent Evers mentioned that the K-12 expectations may soon change that would require 4 years of math in high school, and this could also have an effect. Overall, this was a very informative report. It engaged a good deal of discussion around the table, and I would draw your attention to the report that is in your materials that gives much of that information. We then had a presentation of campus academic plans by two of our campuses, Eau Claire and Superior. We have heard a number of these plans from our other four-year institutions, and this one was from Provost Patricia Klein from UW-Eau Claire. That was the first one that we heard. The highlights were a strong sense of UW-Eau Claire's liberal arts mission and identity through its centennial vision, which has a strong emphasis on inclusive excellence, global knowledge, exploratory studies, and outcomes-based experiential learning. A recent quality improvement review of all its programs, practices, and services, ongoing design of general education, or rather the liberal arts core, which will include increased offerings of high-impact practices, holistic advising of students, a 4-year graduation rate that the campus recognized needs improvement, and overall many hallmarks of excellence, which is the university's motto. Much of this parallels what we heard from the Chancellor the first day. All in all, this was exciting to us. It was very well presented, and there were materials given to us that if the board does not have, others of you may want to have that. We were very excited by what we heard. And then we heard from Provost Chris Markwood from UW Superior, and most of their campus plan was presented by video, which was a first, and very much fun and entertaining as well as informative. Some of the highlights of that plan: UW Superior faculty developed the campus academic plan, and there is a strong sense of ownership. Superior is Wisconsin's public liberal arts college, and it's a designation that this board approved in 1998. The campus is working hard to fulfill its mission as a public liberal arts college through a focus on 5 initiatives. And the initiatives are the Center for Academic Service Learning, First-Year Experience, Global Awareness, Senior Experience, and Writing Across the Curriculum. The campus has developed goals for each of these areas and is intentionally working toward meeting those goals. These were outstanding presentations, and Superior also had a handout that I would recommend to the board. If you don't have that, we can see that you get that. And we were highly supportive of what we heard, and we look forward to future presentations from other campuses. The report of the Senior Vice President included discussion of proposed Education Committee priorities for 09-10. We had discussion of this last time, and we had at this point had a timetable as well as a grouping of some of the goals that we had come to last time. We did reach a consensus on this plan, and you will be able to look at that more closely in the minutes. But it included LEAP Wisconsin, the UW Systems work on liberal education, and that included the Compass presentation that we heard on Thursday. Inclusive excellence, teacher quality, and the UW Systems teacher education programs. UW Systems evolving accountability reporting, and the role of the comprehensive in discharging the recommendations of the Research to Jobs Task Force, and we had some discussion about that. I'm sure you're going to think this is all very exciting, because it is. And now I would like to present our consent agenda. These were items that were on the committee's own consent agenda, so that they did not have discussion, but we had the materials, as did you.
In addition to the minutes from September 10th, the September 10th meetings, we now offer the following for the art of the consent agenda. Resolution 11B2, approving the revised mission at UW-Eau Claire. Resolution 11B3, authorizing the implementation of the BA in Latin American, Caribbean, and U.S. Latino studies at UW-Milwaukee. And Resolution 11B4, authorizing implementation of BS in Applied Social Science at UW-Stout. I would move those for our consent agenda.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
I would like to just make one more comment. We were joined at our committee meeting yesterday. The provost sat with us at the table and participated in our discussion, and I want to express my appreciation to them. That was very helpful to us, and I hope we can continue doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Regent Crane. Now move to a report of the Business, Finance, and Audit Committee. Regent Smith.
President Pruitt, we first heard a UW-Eau Claire presentation, Chancellor Santivich, and student leadership presenting information on the Blue Gold commitment, which we anticipate in the near future will be in front of this board. The Chancellor indicated that the primary purpose of that is to maintain and enhance the quality of UW-Eau Claire degree by immersing high-impact practices into the curriculum in accordance with the strategic plan. We had several student leaders speak, and they spoke about the existing differential here and how the Blue Gold commitment would expand the differential beyond the current scope while maintaining access and affordability. They emphasized the collaboration that's taken place between students, faculty, and administrators on the Blue Gold commitment. An alumnus of UW-Eau Claire also spoke about the value of his degree and the desire of the alumni to preserve that value into the future. We had a rather extensive discussion after that presentation about the Blue Gold commitment concept and differential tuition. President Riley was there. We talked that we're going to probably be getting that proposal sometime in the near future. We hope to probably talk first overall about differential tuition before we get to the specific Blue Gold commitment proposal, and I think Kevin and the Chancellor are going to have some further discussion on the timing of that. Anything you wanted to add on that, Kevin?
No, I think that summarizes it well.
We also got the update on HRS, and in accordance with the committee's request at the September meeting for regular monthly briefings on the status of HRS, Town Manager outlined the components of the report. I think you all got that yesterday in your packet. And this included an update on the hearing of the Joint Committee, the first meeting that is, on Information Policy and Technology, the Legislative Committee, an update on the Huron Consulting Group, a summary of the key safeguards that were added after our last meeting in the Huron contract, a first quarter budget versus actual report for FY 2010, and key deliverables in September and work activities for the rest of this year. And I think, again, we had an extensive discussion, some good questions. Kid and Tom, we thought the Legislative Committee was tough to get in front of our committee. But if there is any questions now, I think the bottom line, was that there were no, for lack of a better term, red flags that we saw at that point in time that needed further, at least immediate follow-up. But Tom is here. We want to spend as much time as I think it's an important topic, obviously. And if anybody has any follow-up questions or comments, I think we can do that right now. Does anybody have any questions or? We had several presentations regarding trust funds. Doug Orr presented key changes and implications of Wisconsin's change from the guidance provided by the Uniform Management of Institutional Funds Act to new guidance provided through the Uniform Prudent Management of Institutional Funds Act. And these changes took effect August 4th, 2009. You have them rather well outlined, I think, in the materials. Tom Reinders reported on the results of specific proxy voting of shareholder proposals that we get each year. The 2009 proxy season saw the filing of 361 proposals related to social issues, which nearly half of them coming to votes. In accordance with prior Regent resolution, the committee was asked to formally accept 7 requests with a total value of $665,000. Again, not surprisingly, the committee then approved that resolution 12C3. We went then to a discussion, reviewed food service contract language regarding contractor-employee transitions. You recall this came about from a discussion of the UW Green Bay food service contract. Julie Gordon, and you have her report in your materials, report that the UW system review of higher education food services found it is not standard industry practice to contractually require a new food service vendor to retain all employees of a previous contractor. That office reviewed contracts from 13 colleges and universities, interviewed 3 food service contractors, a national food service consultant, and representatives of the National Association of College Auxiliary Services. Tom Andrews noted the university has tried to strike an appropriate balance between the needs of the food service contractors and those of the workers. Accordingly, to encourage and facilitate the retention of staff from one contractor to another, the UW System Office of Procurement, unless our board gives some different direction, will insert language into all future food service requests for proposals that require vendors to do the following: hold a meeting to introduce vendor representatives to employees of the current contractor, give assurances that all employees of the current contractor will have the opportunity to compete for positions with the new contractor, and review hiring criteria with those current contractor employees who are interested in pursuing employment with the new contract. Again, we had an extensive discussion after that presentation. We discussed some other options, all the way from basically requiring the new contractor to do nothing, to the other extreme, to basically adopt the union contract that existed with the prior contractor, to some type of 60 to 90-day transition. And this is the proposal that I know Tom and System of Procurement has put forward. So this is not an action item today, but it's a discussion item. And again, maybe we can talk about it at this point if anybody has any further comments. John.
Well, first, Chairman Smith, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak at the committee meeting yesterday. Frankly, I think we can do better for these workers. As I mentioned yesterday, these are generally $10 an hour workers. So over the course of a 9-month contract, they're probably making about $15,000 a year. In the vast majority of cases, the new vendors have picked up the workers that were there. Frankly, they need the workers that are there that are experienced. But as we saw at Green Bay, without some kind of safeguards, there can be issues, and those issues are really about 4 issues that come up. One is the retention issue, in that the workers don't know if they're going to be taken on by the new vendor, and if they are taken on, they don't know what there isn't an objective criteria such as length of service that would determine who stays on. Other issues are the gap in insurance coverage, like the workers at Green Bay faced, where they went for a period of time without insurance coverage. And as we know, one major medical event during a time when you're not insured can become a catastrophe for a family, particularly a low-wage earner like that. And the other thing, obviously, is maintaining the wages. Generally, these contracts are fairly close in wages. Generally, the new vendor is going to have to pay a competitive wage to keep them. But to me, there's no reason why that should be left up to chance, that people could actually suffer a wage cut during the period when a new vendor comes in. Now, all of those problems could be solved if the RFPs require that the new vendor assume the collective bargaining agreement. And that would be a way to solve all the problems. What I would ask is that the committee would look at this issue and come up with some better way to treat these workers. You know, they looked, the report looked at other institutions. That doesn't mean we can't do better than other institutions when it comes to treating people that serve the food for our students. So I would ask the committee to go back and look at this to come up with something that provides a fair transition period for those workers.
Thank you, John. Any comments or questions on there?
Just a clarification, this is not an action item.
Go ahead.
I had one question yesterday I wasn't able to ask. I heard everything, but I wasn't able to respond. And I was just wanting to know how many food service requests or proposals do we expect for the next 12 months? What's coming up?
I think maybe Ruth or who's the right person?
Whitewater, their annual food service contract, dining service contract. So the new contract will start June 1 of this year.
When would those proposals go out?
Within the next probably 2 months.
You need to get somebody to line.
Okay, who else wants? Anyone else wants to speak to the proposal?
So that's before December.
That would be before our December meeting.
No.
No, not necessarily.
Depends on when in December.
Thank you. All right. Tom, did you want to cover all this?
Just kind of another aspect of this. One of the reasons that we are looking at what we're doing, we're talking about adding new language that connects to really putting those employees that are part of a vendor or a contractor, and there's a transition. We're saying to those employees, you're going to be at the front of the line in terms of an interview, in terms of understanding a lot of the issues. I would agree with John. I think when we look at sort of the transition that was taking place with Green Bay, that there were people who were employed with the other contractor who weren't getting good information. I think we have to make sure that any new contractor that's coming in is talking to those people, and particularly management going out and saying, here are the commitments, here's what we're going to do. But we also have to be sure that part of this process that we're dealing with right now is maximizing the ability of the contractor to provide services that the university wants. Okay, we're looking at contractual arrangements that may run up to 7 or 8 years. We're getting to the end when we're moving to this point. We're at the end of a vendor's relationship, and at that point, if they don't win the next contract, the campus is saying we want to do some things differently frequently. They're saying we really need to go in different directions with the amount of service, the type of service, locations of services. And at that point, the real issue, I think, for us is we don't want the new contractor coming in and feeling that they're committed to a set of resource requirements and needs that are basically overshadowed. And we're telling them we want enhanced, new, and better services. It's not that the employees can't provide that. The idea, however, is that when that contractor comes in, they're going to try to do something that's different. And what we're saying is we don't want to have those commitments necessarily automatically moving forward. Now, quite frankly, I think, again, most of these employees will be getting jobs as they move forward. We're seeing that in Green Bay. That's certainly been the case. But just to kind of get both sides, part of the discussion yesterday was really there should be some kind of a balance between what the university needs and issues as it relates to the employees that are part of the previous contractor and sort of their rights, if one would put it that, when we move into a new vendor.
I actually see that both ways. I see John's comment as we look at this, we're actually looking at the efficiency and the effectiveness of the new vendor to deliver the service. If in fact the collective bargaining agreement is a part of the RFP, then it's apples and apples. They would actually, in the collective bargaining process, if they know that this is what it is that they have to do in order to be efficient and effective, then they will make a bid that's commensurate with the collective bargaining agreement. In other words, you add it to it, that's what they have to do, and then you find the right bid.
I guess the way I would look at it is that there's an existing set of functions, activities, tasks, locations, delivery that exists under one contract, and they've been there for X number of years. In a number of instances, we're looking for significant changes, and just bringing that contract forward doesn't necessarily bring the right mix of people, tasks, and so forth. So we want to give the contractor the opportunity to define what they need. And as we're saying, in the process, in all likelihood, most of those employees who want to move forward into the new vendor situation will really have that opportunity.
Well, let's do it this way. I think it was an ongoing, not an action item this time. Let's, if you have it on the agenda for our committee in December, you might want to hold off until our region meeting is done. Yes, you do.
I don't know, Dick, do you want to sponsor it?
Well, I think the issue is whether the process can be done. I mean, we have to have a new folks in place in early or late spring. So part of the issue is they're putting things together now. And I think they're very cognizant of the issues that you talk about. And I think you know better than I, because you may have been closer to the specific process. We've had conversations about how we're going, because we saw what was raised with the Green Bay contract and so forth. I think people are sensitive to that. Our big issue is we've got something coming on, and I think it's June 1. We're going to have somebody new there, or the same people there, but under a new contract.
Our meeting is the first week in December. If the RFPs weren't going to go out until December, then it seems like
We also do have the ability to put something out, and if we need to do an amendment or an addendum to the documents as we go forward, if there are changes that we do, we can do that. Just keep the process moving.
Sure, John.
Well, just one point on that. We talked about the Superior contract in 08, or Superior RFP in 08, and apparently the campus has the leeway in this process to insert language into the RFP that would deal with these issues, as they did in Superior, where there was a 90-day fair trial period for the workers, and wages and benefits were maintained during the transition period. So if you're putting something together for Whitewater, I think the point is you can put those things in. You don't have to wait until the Regents meeting, although I think we do want the committee to have the opportunity to weigh in on that.
That's fair, and I don't want to presume how anybody's going to vote around here.
Yeah, I think in the instance with Superior, it's a relatively small operation, but they had a continuing relationship, and we're feeling very good about making that commitment.
All right. Done in December. Finally, we unanimously approved Resolution 122B2 for additional 2-year contract extension of Gold Country Inc. for space rental and merchandising rights for UW-Madison Athletics. So, on behalf of the Finance Committee, I need the adoption of 122B3, the acceptance of new requests over $50,000, and 122B2, approval of UW-Madison contract for merchandising rights and Gold Country Inc.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Is there a request to remove any item from the consent agenda? Well, then, would we like to remove any of them? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Could I just say something? We just have two distinguished guests who walked into the room I want to introduce. Joanne, Larry,
Former Chancellor of UW-Eau Claire, Larry Schnack, and former Regent Joanne Brandon. So I just want to acknowledge.
Before I call on Regent Wingard, I would let me call on Chancellor Brian Levin-Stankevich, who wanted to just say a couple words.
Thank you. We're almost ready to decide where we
We all like
and as my colleagues who have hosted these meetings know, it takes an entire campus to get ready for your visit. We've had two opportunities this fall to showcase our campus. One in our Higher Learning Commission visit in September. We should be in a report, and we'll be hearing a report on that. It went very well. And the last 2 days with your visit here that we look forward to with great anticipation. But it takes a lot of people, and I hope you'll indulge me in recognizing some of the folks that have made this possible. First of all, and she's in the back there, Deb Lang, and if you stand up as I introduce you. Deb has worked countless hours from everything to logistics to putting together your gift packages that you got at the hotels, and working with food service to make this happen. Jason Anderson is standing already. He's been standing for most of the last 2 days in the back there with our centers crew. Susie Johnson, my assistant, organized the Assistance to the Chancellor's and President's activities. My wife, Debbie Levin-Stankevich, was very instrumental in organizing the activities for the spouses and other guests. MJ Bruckart helped us with all the presentation materials. Kim O'Kelly, Lynn Peterson, Jan Sloan, Karen Stuber, and Dr. Susan Trell are also part of the steering committee. Terry Klassen and our facilities folks do an extraordinary and creative job in keeping an aging physical plant as good as it can possibly be kept, and I've seen that during the visit. Charles Farrell and University Center staff, Mike Rindo and the publications folks. I know you appreciate Christian Wise and the Sodexo staff who have done a wonderful job with the food over the course of the last 2 days. And Chef Tim Grayson who prepared your meal at our house, and also the breakfast you've been eating here. Don Schleicher and the Library Technical Services technical team, Bob Knight, Chris Theo, and the faculty and staff of Art and Music and Theater Arts. Randy Dickerson, the Blue Gold Marching Band, and of course our student volunteers, especially the ambassadors, the Student Philanthropy Club, and our Career Services peer advisors. Vice Chancellor Pat Klein and Beth Howard prepared the presentation. Mike Wick is over here, Associate Vice Chancellor, Paula Collins in Academic Affairs, and most importantly, the students and the faculty and staff who prepared the presentations. They were what we wanted to showcase for you because they're our product. That's what we come to work for every day, and that's the most important thing in our lives. So we were delighted with their participation, not only here in this room, but in the lunchroom, but also over in Haas with the performances. And I can't help but end as we started. Becky Kidney, from whom you heard, our softball catcher, who sang you a bit of an aria to begin this meeting. If you are interested in hearing more of her, she will be in Hansel and Gretel this spring in the Ganther Theater we were in yesterday, and she will be playing the witch. So if you'd like to come over for an opera concert, let me know and we'll make it happen. Thank you.
Wednesday.
Thank you, President Pruitt. I just want to start this off by saying I'm very proud to have all of my friends and colleagues from around the UW system here at UW-Eau Claire, the first university in the UW system that I have come to know and love. I hope you all have enjoyed your time here as much as I have. This meeting will certainly be a highlight of my tenure on this board. So, So with that, the resolution of appreciation to the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire. Whereas, and this one's important, UW-Eau Claire is not the only campus with a chancellor that can rock out. No, it's not actually a resolution. The actual resolution. Whereas the members of the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin system are pleased to learn more about UW-Eau Claire's well-deserved reputation for excellence as demonstrated through its presentations and performances. Whereas UW-Eau Claire advances the educational, cultural, and economic well-being of the Chippewa Valley region and state of Wisconsin through its nationally recognized academic programs, co-curricular activities, undergraduate research, and campus community collaboration. Whereas UW-Eau Claire ranks among national leaders in the percent of students who study abroad and among master's level universities that produce the most U.S. Fulbright Fellows preparing graduates to help Wisconsin compete in an increasingly global economy. Whereas UW-Eau Claire is noted for its outstanding community service programs by being the only Wisconsin school, public or private, named to the President's Higher Education Community Service Honor Roll with distinction every one of the 3 years since the Honor Roll has been instituted. Whereas UW-Eau Claire students engage in faculty-student undergraduate research collaborations that enable students to earn the highest academic honors, including prestigious Goldwater and Rhodes scholarships. Whereas UW-Eau Claire confers the second highest number of baccalaureate degrees in the UW system. Whereas UW-Eau Claire is recognized in national publications, including the U.S. News and World Report, the Princeton Review, and Kiplinger's Personal Finance magazine, as one of the preeminent public universities in the upper Midwest and one of the best higher education values in the nation. Whereas UW-Eau Claire faculty, staff, and students, under the leadership of Chancellor Brian Bevan-Stankovich, have developed a strategic centennial plan transforming our future, with the vision to become one of the premier undergraduate learning communities in the upper Midwest, noted for rigorous, integrated, globally infused undergraduate liberal education, and distinctive select graduate programs. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin system extends its deep appreciation to the staff, faculty, and students of the UW-Eau Claire for their efforts in supporting the mission of the UW system and generously hosting this productive October 2009 meeting.
It has been moved. It's been seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Yes, Regent Crane.
I think that we should also note that this board is very proud to have a UW-Eau Claire student as part of this board. I'm very glad that they're in this.
Thank you. And thank you, Chancellor, and thank you to all your colleagues again for your hospitality. Are there any communications, petitions, or memorials? Never heard any of those. Any unfinished business? If not, we will take can I suggest a 7-minute recess and reconvening at 25 of 12 when we will consider a resolution to recess into closed session.